20-point win against Miami, followed up just a couple days later by a 22-point loss to Virginia Tech. That's a lot to handle in just a few short days. That's a lot to digest if you're a Syracuse basketball fan. To break it all down, though, for you, we have CitrusTV analyst Sean Scott. Sean, 22-point loss to Virginia Tech against the number 10 team in the country in Blacksburg. The number 1 team in the country, though, at the time, Duke. Syracuse took them down in Cameron Indoor. That's two very different performances, two very different teams. Who is this Syracuse Orange squad this year?
Yeah, I don't think most people know. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the football team. A lot of head-scratching results early on this season. I think, though, it comes down to Virginia Tech. That game, as you said, 3 days playing Miami. Yes, there was 1 day of rest in there. Some of it, though, I think comes down to the fact that Syracuse, I don't think they quite get up for playing a team like Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, perennially not that great of a team in the ACC. But the reason why they did so well against Duke, it's because Duke is Duke. It's a household name brand. You're always going to get that against Duke, UNC, even Virginia. And I think some of that also comes down to Virginia Tech had already seen that Syracuse 2-3 zone that everyone knows in college basketball. It's because Washington employs it now that they are led by Coach Hopkins, a former SU assistant. Virginia Tech kind of scorched that Washington Husky 2-3 zone. It's kind of turned the Syracuse West. I think Syracuse, that's kind of what happened there. Well,
Mike Hopkins, this is his second year leading the Washington Huskies. The team before that got a lot of top recruits. Now Isaiah Stewart going over to the West Coast. But if you look at really the past 2 years for the Orange, including this year, you can see a very similar team in personnel. The results, according to the stats, look pretty similar, but the record very different. Last year, the team struggled in conference play. Got a couple wins there, but this year, 5-2 in the ACC, arguably the toughest conference in the nation. Sean, is this team much better than last year?
I'm going to say on the face of it, they are just a little bit better. They brought back basically everyone from last year, added Elijah Hughes, though, to that roster, and Elijah Hughes is the second leading scorer for the Orange. So it stands to reason this team should be a lot better, but as you saw those numbers, they're not all that much better. Basically, the only difference is that ACC record. Yes, they are 5-2 right now, but there's still some room to stumble for them. Syracuse has to be more careful down the stretch.
They got a couple more away games coming up. They've been really good on the road so far this season. That also brings them a little bit on the bubble, though. They have some bad losses. Old Dominion, UConn inside of MSG. They have a couple big wins, though. Duke, Ohio State, both on the road. Sean, this team, is it a bubble team right now, or are they leaning a little bit off it for the first time in a while?
It's a little early for this kind of conversation. I'm going to say they're just barely off the bubble right now. And that's because Syracuse, yes, they do have that big win against Duke. But Syracuse, they cannot rest on the laurels of that Duke victory. You've got a couple bad losses already to Georgia Tech, Old Dominion at home. You got to avoid some ACC clunkers down the stretch like BC and Wake Forest. You lose those games, they're right back to being on the bubble, as everyone's very well aware of. But if you can get another win against, say, a Virginia, maybe in a Clemson on the road, I think they'll be fine. A lot of people have them around that 9-10 seed line right now, so it's definitely not safe territory for the Orange.
Is it really a Syracuse season in the past few years if the fans aren't holding their breath on Selection Sunday?
I think that's just a fact of life now, like death and taxes.
Seems like Jim Boeheim just loves the drama. Sean Scott, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.